being involved in God's work is not something that we look for and simply do. It's when God comes to us, we need to be ready.
So when I was planning to come to Oklahoma Academy and I was meeting for my visa to the U.S., something went wrong in the documents. School was almost starting. So my mom she started having doubts. She was like, is this really the way God wants to lead my daughter? We prayed about it. Then we decided to do our best and to just let everything down. And we just said, well, if you don't want Lillian to go to the U.S. to study, then we know it's your will for her to stay here.
We wait and we seek the will of God, the consistent patterns that God works in. We wait and we seek.
On the podcast today, we have Lillian, and she's from South Korea, right?
Yep.
From South Korea, but you've grown up around the world, right? Where have you grown up?
I went to Africa, Uganda, when I was 5 years old. 5?
Okay,
yeah.
Wow.
So I've been there for 10 years, and now we're in Oman.
Wow. So, Lillian, you're a sophomore here at school, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to Away? How did you get here?
So, my parents' friends, they knew some students that graduated from this school that did well later on in their life. So, they recommended this school to my parents, and my parents prayed and thought about it, and then, yeah.
Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about God taking the initiative in our relationship. So it's not just us. So on the last podcast, we've been talking a lot about being ready to see God, joining Him in His work, making our lives ready for Him, right? Experiencing God. But now, I don't know if this makes sense, but we're going to kind of let God experience us, or we're going to really, this is the part where we start grinding the gears, right? God is uniting with us, and we're going to pursue that relationship with Him. We're going to get into that relationship. And so being involved in God's work is not something that we look for and simply do. It's when God comes to us, we need to be ready. When God comes to us, He's there, and we're going to get into that relationship with Him. So have you guys ever experienced that in your life where God is like, okay, wait, watch out, human, or you. I'm going to take the initiative. I'm going to direct your life. I'm going to direct your plans. Did you experience God in that way? Have you guys ever seen that?
We moved about almost 4 years ago to become the pastor of the church that we're currently at, and now we're about to move again. But both times, there was something that happened just a couple months before. Well, first of all, my parents would start to get impressions that where they were was not exactly where God wanted them to be. And then a couple months before we got the offer to where we ended up going, we would get some other offer that we didn't quite like, but it almost prepared us, because the first time it was we were just gonna switch churches, and that was it, and just help with the church plan basically. And we wouldn't have to move, we wouldn't have to do anything. And personally, I was bro, I don't want to do this. I was totally against it. I hated it. And then finally I kind of came to terms with, well, if that's what God wants me to do, then I'll do it. And then when the time came for us to move 2 hours away from all of our friends that we'd known for almost 10 years, I was like, okay, if this is God's will, I'm going to do it. And then the same thing happened when we're in the process of a move, but in preparation for that, we were asked to move, actually, to become the dean. My dad was asked to become the dean here at this school.
At this school?
Yeah. And
when?
Last May. Yeah, it was at graduation weekend. But regardless, he was asked to do that, and then we got the invitation to move to the church, and that kind of helped us prepare for God wants us to move. There's something else that He wants us to be doing right now. There's
a kind of a forewarning, hey,
and kind of
up here.
He knows that sometimes we need a little
prod.
we need something that will be hey, it's not that bad if I have to deal with this. And then when the thing that He actually wants us to do comes,
we're ready.
We're all ready. We're
prepared.
We're all ready to deal with whatever changes come.
Right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is we're moving back to where we originally moved from, basically.
That's just amazing to me how God does that. We're kind of I think the point, you're kind of trying to drive home here is God has this, we're here, right? And so when we move from that self-centered lifestyle to a God-centered lifestyle, right? That's when God can use us, right? We can change. And He's like, okay, yeah, that's when you're your ministry starts. And of course, we see times in the Bible where that's not always the case. People are called out of a life of self-centeredness and all those different things, right? But like you have Jonah, for example. He's like, not me, not Nineveh, right? And then there's no record of him actually ever kind of changing his mindset there. But
he still wanted, but he was like, I want you to destroy Nineveh.
Right. But God still used them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the ideal, right, is, we're sitting there, we're seeking out God's work, and he's like, okay, so, and remember we talked about this, I think like 4 episodes ago or something like that. It's not necessarily looking where God's working in our lives, but where he's looking, we're looking for where God is working around us in other people's lives and in different projects and all these different things, right? And that is like, God brings that to our attention, and like we're called to it. We're like, that's it. It's not about us. It's about others, and it's about God.
I have seen a lot of like God working in my life, at least, because I've been a missionary for like 10 years, missionary kid for like over 10 years now. And also when I was planning to come to Oklahoma Academy and I was meeting for my visa to the US, something went wrong in the documents, and so we had to do this whole process again, and school was almost starting.
Yikes.
And then we realized that the registrar is being changed, so we're like, my mom she started having doubts. She was like, is this really the way like God wants to leave my daughter, or is this because like there's some crossroads. So my mom, we prayed about it, and then we decided to like do our best and to just let everything down. And we just said, well, if you don't want Lillian to go to the US to study, then we know it's your will for her to stay here and get some experience in the Arab country. So we just let you do your will. And then one day we heard, I got my visa appointment date like for the interview. And it was very great to see how God can work.
Yeah. That's amazing how God just like totally turned the situation around, because like you can see, okay, so God is not always going to be like clear, distinct, big line, big red letters. Here you go. This is what you need to do. But it's kind of trials sometimes. Like he leads us around, and it's not always just straightforward. But those indicators, I think, like the small indicators and those trials that he leads us through, are going to make us like, I don't know how to say this, like more faithful. Like we're going to be able to see his will easier and faster once we've gone through those experiences.
Exactly. Right. And this has been something kind of hard for me, because both times where, this is funny. So I wanted to go do literature evangelism, and then something happened, right? A circumstance happened, and then I went and did this other project, and then I wanted to do literature evangelism again the next summer, and then the same circumstance happened again. And then I went and I did the other project, the same other project. So it was like a repeat twice. But I'm almost thinking like, and I still, sometimes I really struggle with this. Like, I don't know why, but it's like, I'm like, did God really call me to go do this other project? Is this, or was I supposed to go do literature evangelism and Satan stopped me? Because Satan can cause things to go wrong, and that puts doubts in our mind, right? And that's not necessarily always God working. And oftentimes when it's just us, we often have a biased opinion, and we base off of our past experiences and the current circumstance. And it's like, it's super easy to be like, to make poor, rash decisions, right? But, when God speaks to us, we need to be sure that it's him, and we need to follow that all the way through.
When we're trying to determine God's will for our life, or when we're trying to figure that out, I think it's really just like the attitude that we have. Like you were saying, like the attitude that we're having is what's keeping us from seeing God's will. When we have our bias, we won't be able to see God's will clearly. Like our vision will be clouded. How would you guys say to unblur that vision?
You've heard the saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Absolutely.
And he often, sometimes even puts those things in our life he does it to grow our faith. And he knows what the end will be. Right. And maybe he's doing it to lead you in a different direction. Obviously.
Right.
And that may not be the case, but...
And that's something...
That's how it works.
And that's something I need to be okay with, right?
Yeah.
Just because we feel like we have these plans that
we can't hold on to our desires.
and we're like, okay, no, I feel like even if it's not our own desire, but like, I'm not very comfortable with this, but even if, we still like kind of want to do it because, we feel like God's calling us to do something, I feel like flexibility is so important. Absolutely. Oftentimes it's good to like, talk to somebody, talk to a really good friend of yours that you trust that, will not steer you the wrong direction, or parents, or, superiors or colleagues or whatever, I mean, not whatever, I mean, somebody you trust, but, asking for other opinions, godly counsel, asking for godly counsel. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the wicked, but of the godly, right? Yeah. So, looking for godly counsel is, asking...
A big deal.
Yeah, church members, that's a really big deal because it's really easy to make rash decisions. And, I think that would be a practical way of... dealing with that, being like, is this really God calling me? Is this God taking the initiative towards me? Or is this Satan putting up a decoy? Or is Satan trying to steer me away? Or is God trying to steer me away? Who's talking to me? And what am I actually supposed to be doing?
Yeah, because talking to other people can actually help you think more broadly than just like your narrow view that you see.
Right.
If you listen to what other people say, you can also say, oh yeah, I could view this situation in this different way, like how other people can see it too. I think, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
people.
Absolutely. There's not one specific method that works. I mean, there's tons of human beings and there's tons of ways that'll work.
And there's many methods that would work for the same situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And here, something I'd like to point out, I don't know where we talked about this. I feel like we did. But notice there was only one person in the Bible who had a burning bush experience. Okay? So it's unique. It's unique to all the people individually, right? Absolutely. So, if several people in the Bible had a burning bush experience, you might see some people running around in the mountains trying to find a burning bush for God to talk to them, right?
On fire.
Yeah, but no, there was only one burning bush. That was unique to Moses. That was a unique experience, right? And we have our own unique experience. And kind of like you were saying, it's not a singular method. It's unique. It's different. And that's part of the beauty of it, is that your walk with God and your walk with God and your walk with God is not like mine. Right? It's individual. It's only between me and God. It's not me basing my faith off of your faith. Because, what if something happens? Like,
I think that's the beautiful thing of it. It's personal. And that's that experience with God is personal. And that's why it's beautiful to us. It may not be so amazing to other people. It'd be like, oh, it's another testimony. But with us, it's exciting, right? Like, it's amazing. It's beautiful. We want to experience that, right? But like you were saying, getting the outside sources and everybody, like people that you can trust. I think that trust is one of the most, trust is the biggest, or one of the biggest practical ways of unclouding that vision, right? God initiates us. We are in a God-centered state of being. We're looking for God, where God is working around us so that we can take part in that work. God engages us. Okay, and while we're doing this, we're waiting, we're trusting in Him that He's going to take control of our lives, right? He's going to take control of our lives, and He's going to guide us, right, where we need to go. And so essentially, we wait and we seek the will of God, and we're going to talk about a little bit more what that means in future episodes. Different factors, how to read that a little bit better. How do you know who is talking, and the patterns, the consistent patterns that God works in, and all these different things. Right? So we wait and we seek. That was episode 8 of the Experiencing God podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new about experiencing God on a personal level. We release a brand new episode every 2 weeks, so make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell to get notifications whenever we release the brand new episode. I really hope you have a great day and God bless.